Hello learners, welcome to our session today. I'm your instructor, CPA Aringo Frederick, a continuation of what we've been doing earlier on, SGE. A very, very sweet paper, so long as we approach it with an open mind. A very sweet paper, so long as you approach it with an open mind. The worst mistake that you can do in SGE is to cram. That's the worst mistake that you can do in SGE. So even as you are continuing with this concept, kindly, I'll always want us to have an open mind. Anytime you are approaching problems for SGE, I'll always want us to have an open mind. If we have an open mind, it will be very easy for us to handle these problems. But if you go with an approach of maybe you've crammed, or rather you are struggling, you want to struggle to recall what you are taught in class, that case will be messing big up. So I want you guys to always approach this concept with an open mind. Think like a manager. At any given point you're handling SG, at any given point you're handling SG, you're supposed to think like a manager. You're supposed to think like a manager. So looking at the concept that I want us to handle today, this ideally is under corporate governance and ethics. A very important concept that we must always have at the back of our mind. You must always have at the back of our mind. So to introduce this, I want us first of all to understand the term corporate governance. The term corporate governance. I know we can define it in so many ways. I believe we can define corporate governance in so many ways. So it's all about us understanding what is corporate governance. At any given point you're talking of corporate governance, ideally, what do we mean? So you'll find that whenever you're talking of corporate governance, my good students, I'll just be looking at a form of, is kind of a system of rules, right? You're talking of a kind of a system of rules, probably practices and processes by which a firm is administered. So you're talking of it as a very simple concept whereby you're looking at corporate governance is a system of rules. This is a system. It's a system of rules. System of rules. Talk of practices. Talk of practices and processes. And processes. And processes and processes by which a firm is directed or controlled. By which a firm is directed or controlled. So we're looking at it as a form of a system of rules, term it as practices and processes by which a firm is directed or controlled. And the main element here, it will be upon the firm to balance the interest of all the stakeholders at this point. The main issue or component of corporate governance is that I'll just be looking at a case whereby the firm will be there. At least they are going to try as much as they can to balance all the interest of the stakeholders. And when we're talking of our stakeholders, we are talking of the shareholders here. We are talking of the community. We are talking of the government and any other person who the decision of the firm will affect either directly or indirectly. So you'll find that this is corporate governance ideally is usually a giant thing that at least even us whom we are practicing the aspect of corporate, we can't try, or rather we can't tend to look at it, all of it as it is. So it's very important for us to understand the main basics of this corporate governance. So as maybe you can add that, whereby you are saying that at this point you'll find that this corporate governance essentially involves balancing the interest of the company, balancing the interest of companies, stakeholders, of company stakeholders, of course, such as shareholders, talk of management, and of course government and the community, So basically we're looking at it in a case whereby the essential case here is that we want to balance the interest of companies' shareholders, company stakeholders. And when you're looking at company stakeholders in a wider perspective, we are talking of the government is there, as I mentioned earlier on. We are talking of the shareholders, they are there. We are talking of the aspect of maybe talk of customers, talk of suppliers, they are all there. So basically this is a form of corporate governance. Clearly understand the concept of corporate governance basically as form of practice, form of the aspect of rules, form of the system by which a company is governed, And at the back of your mind also, the other thing that you should recall is that we are looking at a case whereby it involves us balancing the interest of the company's stakeholders, So basically, in a simple term, that is what you can term a corporate governance. At this point, you're also talking of ethics, because you're talking of corporate governance and ethics. Now, what about ethics part of it? What about ethics? I know this is not a new term. Ethics is not a new term at all. Of course, I know in one way or the other, we normally talk of maybe this person is unethical, maybe talk of these politicians are unethical, they normally say, right? Maybe this person is he has ethics. Our manager has ethics. Our CEO has ethics. This company, say like mDarasa, has good ethics. So what is this ethics that you're talking about? So you'll find that term it in a simple term, looking at it on a layman's perspective, ethics. We normally talk of tabia, right? Tabia, that is in Swahili. Tabia, talk of ethics. Character, talk of ethics. Good ethics or bad ethics. You can either have good ethics or talk of bad ethics. So when you're talking of ethics in business, ideally, my good students, so should come at the back of our mind. So we normally term as ethics as a process of probably integrating values such as honesty. These are values, ethics. We are talking of ethics as values. Values, talk of ethics. We are talking of ethics as values such as honesty, talk of trust, transparency, talk of transparency, talk of fairness, etc. So we are talking of ethics as a value such as what? Honesty, trust, fairness, maybe transparency and all this, right? Now, corporate governance and ethics. We want to incorporate these values. We want to incorporate these ethical values in our operation. Now, that's why you're terming it as what? Corporate governance and ethics. Integrating these values to the company's policy. That is what will give us what? The aspect of corporate governance and ethics. We've defined corporate governance as this is a system of rules, right? Practices and processes by which a firm is directed or controlled. Bringing in corporate governance and ethics, we are talking of all these aspects. I'm looking at all these practices. And at the same time, these practices must conform with certain values, such as what? Honesty, trust, transparency, fairness, which as at the end of the day, there is going to benefit who? The company's stakeholders, So when you're looking at governance and ethics, as you have clearly seen, Ideally, we're just incorporating our general knowledge and what we've studied. So you'll find that initially, or rather on a very lighter note, we can talk of ethics as values. So integrating the two components, corporate governance and ethics. That's the main thing that we should be having at the back of our mind to understand this whole concept of corporate governance and ethics. Now, after we've understood this component, my good student, after we've understood the component of integrating all these values, such as honesty, trust, transparency, fairness, of course, into our policies, of course, as at the end of the day, they are going to assist us in making what? In making our decision, So that's a simple concept on what we should understand anytime we are dealing with corporate governance and ethics. Now, after we've noted that one, which was a very important concept for us to understand the whole idea, because the main idea here is for us to grasp the concept correct. Now, after we've managed to understand that concept, the other element that we must always know, you'll find that ideally whenever you're looking at corporate governance, just as Mwalimu had mentioned, these are very complex. This is a very, very complex. This is a very, very talk of a complex beast, if you can mention. So even those of us probably who have built our careers in this field, you'll find that we might not fully understand everything that corporate governance encompasses. Having mentioned that one, that's why we normally tend to summarize corporate governance with the concept of what? 4 P's. We normally tend to summarize the concept of what does corporate governance involves or entails. So there are 4 P's of corporate governance, which are the guiding philosophies, for us to operate our corporate governance. So basically, what I want us to look at is the concept that we normally term it as what? 4 P's of corporate governance. 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 So that at any given point, and by the way, this one is going to assist us to summarize the concept of corporate governance. So that at any given point you are talking of corporate governance, 4 P's must always click at the back of your mind. The 4 P's that you want to study now should always click at the back of your mind anytime we are looking at what? Anytime you are talking of corporate governance. And these 4 P's, my good students, ideally will entail the following. Number 1 P, we normally talk of people. Number 2, we normally talk of purpose. Number 3, we normally talk of what? Process. And the last one, we normally talk of, number 4, we normally talk of performance. So anytime we are dealing with corporate governance, my good students, make sure that the concept of 4 P's has clicked at the back of our mind. Because as I've mentioned, you'll find that corporate governance is a complex beast. That even us who are practicing corporate governance, at times we might not tend to understand everything in corporate governance. But as we've mentioned, that whenever we are talking of corporate governance, is going to be summarized. Everything under corporate governance is going to be summarized with the 4 P's that we've mentioned here. That is people. Very, very important. Purpose. Very important. Talk of process, and again you are talking of what? Performance, which is very key for us to get this concept very clearly. So let us start with the first P. Understanding the first P, that you're talking of it as what? As people. People. First P, we are saying we are talking of people. Ideally, you'll find that people, very important factor in corporate governance. Because ideally, these are the people who have formed the organization, right? These are people, or talk of people, these are the main factors whom they have formed an organization. And looking at that case under people, it will be very important for us to understand that at this point, that's why it normally comes first in corporate governance. Because every piece that exists for a purpose and to achieve that purpose, you'll find that I must involve people. I must involve people. And that's why you normally say that they normally come first in the equation. We normally say people come first in the 4 P's because they exist on every side of business equation. People exists on every side of business equation. Anytime you are talking about business, we can't talk about business without involving people. We can't. And that's why you'll find that also in these 4 P's, people will always come first, because any element of business, it has to involve people. And that's why we are saying they exist on every side of business equation. They exist on every side of business equation. They exist on every side of business equation. That is what we must always have in mind. That is what we must always have in mind. So you'll find that people are the organizers who determine a purpose to work towards. They develop a consistent process to achieve. They evaluate their performance outcomes and use those outcomes to grow themselves and others as people. Very important key element that we are talking about. If possible, for those who are writing, I can mention that again for you guys. So we are saying that the first P, which you're terming it as people, first of all, we said that people, they exist on every side of business equation. We've continued further and explained that people are the organizers who determine a purpose to work. They determine purpose to work towards, purpose to work. They determine purpose to work. They determine purpose to work towards. They develop a consistent process. They develop a consistent process to achieve it. To achieve what? To achieve this purpose, right? They develop a consistent process to achieve the purpose. Then again, you are saying they evaluate their performance outcomes. Evaluate their performance outcomes and use those outcomes to grow themselves and others as people. So you'll find that, and the whole idea, look at this case, we had already defined corporate governance. We are talking of system of rules, practices and processes by which a firm is directed or controlled. And that's why you are saying that people are very important anytime you are looking at corporate governance. So that's the first P. What about the second P, my good student? This is the first P. What about the second P? The second P, you are talking of purpose. Why are we doing this? A good question. Why are we studying, for example? Because, first of all, it has involved character you, who is a person, right? Then the other question would be, why are you doing this? Why are you studying CPA right now? Why are you viewing this video right now? Why have you paid for this video right now? Why? The same case will happen at any given point I'm looking at what? At corporate governance. You'll find that, yes, we have involved people, right? Which they are going to be involved in certain processes within the organization. But basically, for what purpose? Why do you normally have plans in each and every week in your job environment? Why? Because there is a purpose that needs to be achieved. Because there is a goal that needs to be achieved. Because at that point there is something that you are aiming at. That's why you are talking of what? Purpose. The same concept, you are going to integrate it anytime I'm looking at corporate governance. Because we should be having a purpose, of course, that we are in that organization, right? There should be a purpose for that organization to be there. And that's why we are talking of it as also a very key element whenever you are talking of corporate governance. Maybe just to explain it to you so that you have this in mind very clearly. Whenever you're talking of purpose, you're saying that purpose, ideally, as we've seen here, that is the next step, right? Every piece of governance exists for a purpose. Listen to that very carefully. We are saying, if you're writing, please have it on your paper or have it on your book. We are saying that every piece of a governance exists for a purpose, and to achieve a purpose, therefore, is the guiding principle of the organization. And the guiding principle of the organization, as we'll be talking later on here, you'll find that that's why in each and every probably firm, in each and every company, they normally tend to have a mission statement, and they normally tend to have what? A vision statement. You'll find that every organization, they normally have mission statement, and they normally tend to have what? A vision statement, because that is what is going to define their purpose. That is what is going to define their purpose. So we are talking of it at this case, whereby we are talking of maybe just to explain it again, we are saying that at this point, purpose is the next step. Every piece of governance exists for a purpose and to achieve a purpose. Therefore, is the guiding principle of the organization, as we've just mentioned. Their mission statement, every one of their policies and projects should exist to further the idea or the agenda of the company, So you'll find that to achieve, this is a first step of us achieving whatever that we've set in mind. This is the first case, this is the first step, ideally, purpose. Now, we've already known our purpose. Our main purpose is to pass our exams, right? Our main purpose is to pass our exams. There comes now the process. What is the process that I'll be having? What's the process I'm going to indulge myself in for me to pass this exam? And that is why we'll be talking of step number 3, which in this case we are talking of what? Process. We are talking of process. And my good students, just recall what I had mentioned earlier on. Whatever mwalimu is giving you ideas for you to widen your mind wide. Me explaining this concept ideally is for you to grasp the main idea behind it. And that's why you'll find that I won't wait for you guys to clear your notes and everything. What I'm giving you is idea. What I'm giving you is the concept. So long as you have this concept clear, you'll find that applying the same, it will be very, very easy. Because as we've mentioned, SGE is not to cram. SGE is a matter of us understanding the whole concept. So we are talking of the process. Just relating it to you right now. Why you've identified your purpose is to pass exam, right? Now, there's this process, and that's why you're watching this video right now, because you want to learn. And to learn is going to assist you to pass that exam. So I'm having this aspect of what? Process of obtaining that knowledge. The same case will happen with the organization. We've already identified what you want to achieve. And now allow to be involved in steps that is going to assist us for us to achieve what? For us to achieve that goal that we've set. So now comes the process. If it is a product, we need to manufacture. If it is a service, we need to provide. Probably if it is a project, we need to put it in action. And all these cases. That's why you're talking of what? There's that aspect of process. There's that aspect of process. Maybe to explain to you just exactly what Mwalimu had mentioned, or rather what Mwalimu has written for the guiding notes, we are saying that purpose at this point is the third step. Every talk of a process, you're saying that governance is a process by which people achieve. We're talking of it as governance is a process by which people achieve their company's purpose. And that process is developed by analyzing performance. Processes are refined over time in order to consistently achieve their purpose. And it's always smart to take a critical eye to your governance process. So in this case, there are some questions that we're going to ask ourselves. Can they be streamlined or they can't be streamlined? So basically, just as we are saying here, exactly what we mentioned, and again, I'm going to repeat it again. You are saying purpose at this point, or rather governance is a process by which people achieve their company's purpose. And that process is developed by analyzing performance. Processes are defined every time in order to consistently achieve their purpose. And ideally, it is always smart to take critical eye to the governance processes. Just exactly as what I'd explained. Exactly what I'd explained. Now, looking at the final P, which in this case we are talking of what? Performance. Imefika siku ya mtihani. Sasa ni wewe kwenda kufanya na tuone results. Right? We are talking of what? Performance. We are talking of performance. So, what will you understand when you are talking of performance, my good students? What do you need to understand when you are talking of performance? So, performance, ideally, you normally say that this is analysis, performance analysis is a key skill in any industry. The ability to look at the results of a process and determine whether it was successful, and then apply those findings to the rest of the organization. This is one of the primary functions of governance process. You are talking of what? We are talking of performance. You are talking of performance. So at this point already, I've already gone through that process of studying. I've gone through that process of doing my exams. Now we want to analyze our performance. Have we passed these exams or not? And if we've not passed, what could be the reasons that we've not passed? And if we've passed, thumbs up to us, right? So the same case will apply to the organization, whereby they have done all the aspects of process which needs to be done for them to achieve their goal and objective. Now we want, or we are analyzing the results of what we've achieved. So you'll find that ideally, looking at these 4 P's, it is as if we've summarized everything that we need to know under corporate governance. So the next class, my good students, we are going to meet here and we are going to talk about the importance of corporate governance and ethics. And also at that point, it will be very ideal for us to handle various questions from our past paper, which you'll find that ideally they have been tested directly. Also some of these questions, like 4 P's of corporate governance that was tested, I think that is either in 2015 or 2016 thereabout, whereby you are told to explain the concept or the 4 P's under corporate governance. So to this juncture, thank you so much, and I want you to join me in the next session whereby we are going to talk of importance of corporate governance. Thank you so much.